Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 385th episode of Constructed Criticism. I am your record holding host, Mason, joined by my amazing Smash Brothers co host, Spencer, and my Cube Fanatic co host, Abe. How are y'all doing?
I'm a little under the weather, but I'm happy to be back.
Heck yeah. I'm also under the weather. I'm just riding high on that Dayquil. It hit right before we started. I got a cough drop in my mouth. I'm doing it. I got some water over here. Luckily, this show episode is not about me a whole lot, so it's not going to be a problem.
Yeah,
For
I woke
sure.
up. I woke up sick on Friday, and so I couldn't go to Vegas. My whole family is now sick, and yeah, well, here we are now. Doing the podcast.
I feel great. I'm having a great day. Life is awesome. I'm in perfect health. You know, I didn't play any Magic I didn't play any like Magic tournaments over the weekend. I didn't get sick. I'm a wash. I'm the middle ground here. I'm the relatable person in the episode for most of you.
That's so great. I'm so glad that we have one person here who can be a solid rock. It's gone to my head, and also so has the virus. So it's a real combo. But today we are going to be talking about MTG Vegas in modern, and specifically me, Barry. We're talking about me. I got ninth at the tournament, and I apparently have tied the record for the closest Grand Prix miss top 8 of all time with Joe Lissette at 0.03%. So we're going to talk all about that and everything there, and we're going to do a little interview style thing and go over a couple things. But first, we do need to do always improving. That is the point of the show. We're always trying to get better. And Spencer, you weren't with us last time, so you're up first, buddy.
Yeah, I had a pretty fun week overall for what it's worth. Wednesday I got to play paper standard for the first time in over 2 years, pretty easily. Pretty amazing, to be completely honest. It was extremely fun. I'm excited to go again tomorrow if I'm feeling a little bit better. But I also just got the chance to work on a bunch of standard stuff. Today's episode was going to be, a standard episode, talking about some stuff. But instead, we're audibling because Mason's a killer, and it's pretty great. But I got to play quite a bit of standard over the last week and try some decks that I wasn't trying and cards that I wasn't trying before to kind of prepare for this week's show. And actually was able to post 3 updated deck lists in our Patreon Discord. So head over there to check those out. But it was really cool to play Paper Magic again. And honestly, there were interesting moments. I get pretty lazy when playing Arena, and I just found myself being way more attentive and enjoying the game a lot more playing Paper again, and it really gave me some fire to be more attentive while playing Arena this week.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely can relate. Playing Paper for the SUG Con really got me hyped, and so has Vegas. And so I feel you there. I'm here, and I was like, my roommate's gonna test that I played a little standard on the phone before we realized that I was gonna be having such a good run to get ready for this episode, and I was down to play, and so yeah, it's super fun to play on Paper. Long story short, it's just the best. I can't wait. Abe, what about you? What was your always improving moment?
As you alluded to in the intro, I've started another new project. Last week it was a little personal thing with beatboxing. This week it's been researching a bunch about cubes and cube building. I'm kind of we've been doing a bunch of drafts locally, and it's been fun. But as this limited format has kind of been a little sour for some of my friends, and I've kind of wanted to get into the process of getting into cube for a while now. I've taken the dive, and I'm really just trying to answer the questions of what do I think is fun and what am I looking to make happen. And it's kind of like this big deck building challenge tied up in building something much bigger than any single deck, and encompassing kind of just a set of archetypes. And so thinking about that and all of the logistical challenges with that and stuff has been super cool, and thinking of all the cards I'm excited to play with, or how to balance it out. And the cube experiences I have had, a lot of doing that.
Yeah, awesome. My always improving moment is it's a little weird comparatively. I have some stuff that we're going to talk about in the main episode that I think I could have easily kind of phoned in, if you would, for this segment. But I actually had kind of a weird one where, so the main event for the Modern was Friday, Saturday. So technically my Magic playing was quote unquote done Saturday night. And so Sunday I went to the hall and I played a little Commander, and I just mostly walked around and talked to people. But I talked to a lot of people who are content creators or up and coming content creators. I got stopped a lot, and I had a lot of conversations with them. I had conversations with people who are already like, very big in the scene, like Talia Vess. And my was doing one was really kind of crystallizing my thoughts on what I think actually makes like really good content, and like talking to them, being able to relate to them and explain like how I got to where I am and do my sort of thing, and that sort of stuff. And so the improving moment was like getting this better sense of kind of like what I believe to be so, and to hash out these conversations, and also learning from them and learning what they think, and being able to take the stuff that Talia talked about, or I talked to Jafar MTG, who's like wanting to start his own podcast and stuff. And so I got to talk to all these different people, and it was a really interesting experience that really is a big part of my life in Magic, but it's really hard to talk to and meet other people that do that, especially in person. It's just really hard to like run into a bunch of other content creators. But at MTG Vegas, it's very easy. I got to talk to like Kes Wiley with the Masters of Modern podcast, and so it's a kind of a crazy experience. So it was awesome. I talked to CGB a little about some stuff, and yeah, it's fun. So it's a good time. That's
awesome.
Gonna do it for all.
Oh,
yeah, that's gonna do. Yeah, you go. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about this too. I mean, you've been in the game longer than I have.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that it's really, it's awesome to hear you talk about challenging yourself in an interesting way, where you're like trying to articulate something, is always a way where you can, I don't know how to say this, but like when you have to put your name on something and articulate it out into the world, it makes you care more about your thought process behind what you're saying, and it's really cool to hear you having that experience.
Yeah, it was great. It was truly cool. I got to meet like the streamer who covered. Well, I knew her, but I got to finally meet her in person. Eyelash Rafara on Twitch.tv, the person who was streaming the event. She had like a little backpack set up, and I got to do an interview with her, and I think she recorded one of my matches. If you're curious and that sort of thing, you can check out her VODs. She's super nice, and it was interesting to talk to her and her approach to things, as she's just starting off, and it's a whole new world to her.
Did she capture Allie giving Cedric Phillips the death glare?
No, our good friend Brittany Davis was taking a bunch of pictures, and we were looking through the pictures, or I was looking through the pictures for like to put on Instagram for like my memory collage, and I'd like zoomed in to see the board state, and as I did, I accidentally zoomed in on Allie, and I saw that face. I was like, oh my god. I like ran around my Airbnb and showed everyone. And I was like, Allie, can I tweet this? Allie, can I tweet this? And so I actually threw it up on Twitter first, and then see if anyone else noticed it for like 5 minutes, and then I made my meme post. I was like, okay, no one else noticed. I get to be the one. And so it was super funny. Yeah, that I have a great story for that one. That's probably going to be one of the. There's a story question later, but that's an all-timer story.
Well, let's go over this, because my esteemed co-host and I, we're really excited to talk to you, Mason. I mean, Abe and I have been fans of yours for so long, and
day one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so, really, I was. It was funny. It was hard to be jealous of people this weekend, just because I was so sick. I was like, I would be absolutely miserable if I had gone. But you, I was jealous of. You gotta play my favorite format. You gotta, stay with a bunch of people. No, just kidding. No, I actually was legit rooting for you really hard this weekend, and kind of knowing where you ended up, and something that you had been talking about for a few weeks, to kind of switch on over and not, I guess, bury the lead. Let's talk about your deck really quick. So,
by all means,
do you want to do the honors of reading your deck list over?
I totally can, and of course, as you know, I know it by heart, and I'm not loading it right now on another screen. But if I were, I would say that
so the lights would change on your face on the video.
Yeah, because maybe I have Goldfish in dark mode, but for some reason Google Chrome extensions won't do that for Drive. Who knows? Maybe that's just a random happenstance. But that were I played Money Pile at SCG Vegas. This deck we talked about in last week's episode. If you haven't heard or you're just tuning in for the first time, Money Pile is a 4-color, kind of big mid-range controlling deck that essentially wants to take over the game by controlling the board and accruing value. And so the deck list is 4 Iceman Quadra, 4 Eternal Witness, 4 Omnath, the Locus of Creation, that's the broken one, 3 Fury, 4 Solitude, 4 Red and 6, 4 Teferi Time Reveler, an Abundant Harvest, 3 Ephemerate, 3 Lightning Bolt, 4 Prismatic Ending, 4 Counterspell, 4 Expressive Iteration, 1 Time Warp, let's do it again, the 4 Abundant Growth, and I have 29 lands in my main deck. The important thing to know is that most of these lists are the same when it comes to mana, except for me. I have cut the one Reflecting Pool that you'll see in all the lists, and I have added 1 more land. I made both of those 2 fetches. They can be any Flooded Strain or Wooded Foothills that you like. I prefer to have Wooded Foothills there, but you can make it Flooded Strain as well. Both have merits. 1 Engineered Explosives, 1 Alpine Moon, 2 Flushatorm, 2 Dovendito, 3 Lightning Helix, 2 Endurance, 2 Force of Vigor, and 1 Emrakul, the Promised End, to round out our sideboard, along with, of course, Yorion, the Sky Nomad, as our companion. And that is it. And I learned a fun little fact for everyone here, since we haven't played much Paper Magic. It turns out I have to announce Yorion every single game, even though my deck can never legally not have Yorion, else I will not be able to pick up Yorion. A little fun fact that happened to my neighbor in a round. And I was like, oh, okay. I will announce Yorion every round, even though I can never not have Yorion. So,
yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed from playing Paper Magic again, is playing with Luris. Is announcing it every time is kind of hard to remember, if not for the fact that I have the pack insert companion token that no one knows exists.
Yeah.
So invest in one of those.
I put my companion under my life pad. So when because I write, like I had the little small CFB one, I normally use like 2 sides every match. So it's right there. That's luckily been my thing. So, but yeah, it can be hard to remember. You know, I never got anyone on it, but like, it's like kind of lame that I could get got. But that is my deck list.
Awesome. So
yeah.
I'll go with my questions first for you, Mason. I think the listeners kind of experienced part of this, as you know, you've been talking about this deck for about 3 weeks now on the podcast. But why don't you talk to me kind of about the process on like ending up here? Were you like gunning for this, or was it like kind of an iterative process to get to the point where you're both playing this specific 95 and also, you know, picking this as a starting point, or you know, wherever you got to it? Yeah.
So it all starts back with SCG Con. So SCG Con, the Invitational, happened 4 weeks ago. Yes, 4 weeks ago now at this time. And the week before that, Kane Reinhardt, a friend of mine, and Canister both top-8 the challenge with an updated version of what will eventually become this deck you see here now. In fact, my deck is very similar to the one that Kane is playing most recently. And basically, this deck was taken from a challenge win of someone who had a deck like this, but had a lot more flickery stuff and a little bit bigger game. Basically, it was like, hey, can we condense this down to be a little bit more efficient? And so the deck looked really appealing. I like Murktide. I think Murktide is still a really good deck. I think it's a top 5 deck, which is a little bit of a controversial opinion, but I do think it is the worst of the best decks, but still very good. And it is like a solid choice. And I wanted to be able to play Money Pablo. It's going to be really hard to get all the cards. And it felt like a deck I would need a little bit more practice with to play proficiently. And I felt very confident with all my stuff with Blue Red Murktide. So after the Invitational, I was pretty set on like I'm starting with Money Pile as my base of operations. I own all the cards somehow, except for like 2 Eternal Witnesses. And so I'm going to work on this deck. And this is going to be the thing that I'm trying to work towards, because I do believe this deck to be very strong for a lot of aspects. I'll get into in 1 second. And the other thing is, I didn't expect a whole lot of people to put in a whole lot of extra work who hadn't already gone to the Invitational, and I expected kind of for the format to not move too much in that time. And while it moved a lot more than I thought, Paper has a habit of not moving as quickly. So that turned out to be fine having a deck like this. That being said, I do think this is the best or second best deck in the format, depending on how you want to talk about things. This and Hammer Time, I believe, are 1A and 1B. But the process of ending up on Money Pile is that basically the format is a lot about taking a little bit of board control and kind of riding it to victory. Like you'll see Hammer tries to put on one creature. Like while they do go wide in some games, often their best games, they're trying to like splinter twin you out where they slowly constrict you and then kill you. with a hammer, or they just cheese you. You'll see this with Murktide, you see it with Jund Saga, you see it with the Rhinos decks. Actually, like your Rhinos decks are basically trying to resolve one Crashing Footfalls, and then if you try to like present more board pressure, they try to cascade a bunch more to get around it, or they just try to protect it with like their Force Negations, their Brazen Borrowers, and stuff like that, and hope that they can like just kill you with a couple of Rhinos. So the game is often about the board, but not in a way that it has been historically in the past with decks like Humans, where it's super wide and you need cards like Supreme Verdict. You actually just need to be able to answer one or two specific things. And this deck is very, very good at doing that. Between Bolt, Prismatic Ending, Solitude, Fury, Teferi Time Reveler, actually to an extent, against like things like tokens and shutting off Cascade cards. The deck is very good at controlling these boards that get kind of large, but not completely out of control. And some of my decisions on Money Pile, like playing Ice Fang Coatl, or to make sure that I kind of prepare for people who went a little wider in the actual wider meta game. But I'm gonna put Money Pile because the deck is really, really good at that, and it's very, very good against Hammer Time. If people just default to playing Hammer Time at this tournament, I'm going to have a very easy tournament. I played Hammer 3 times, and my hardest opponent was Cedric Phillips by a lot. And even that, it kind of actually just got to the point where it was like, this is so hard because Cedric is good enough to maybe somehow beat these cards, but I don't think he can actually beat these cards. I just need to respect that he is the person that could. And so that is kind of the big reasons like why I land on this deck. It's very, very powerful, and it has the benefit of something unlike Hammer, where Hammer, while excuse me, extremely strong and a strong deck by all regards, it does need pieces to really come together. And while Money Pile is kind of like bigger and clunkier at times, it does have like a lot of really cheap spells. Like a lot of the deck is like 2 mana or less if you count if you're willing to pitch the elementals to not die. And so you're able to make it to those bigger kind of turns with the more powerful cards. And it's really, really hard for your opponents to actually like ever overcome you on value. So they have to be playing something like a combo deck. And it really allows you to actually like leverage your play skill and your understanding of the format. And that is something I think I'm quite good at when it comes to Modern, is knowing what decks are trying to do, how they're trying to accomplish their goals, and how I can punch a hole in it. And so those are kind of the big things. Also, it's super fun to play. It's just it's a blast. So at least for me, I know a lot of people don't like it. That's at least what I've learned over the weekend. So
my next question, unless you wanted to add anything on that, Abe.
No, that's. I mean, we spent a whole episode talking about where we thought Modern is, and if you haven't listened to that and you're listening to this, you should absolutely go listen to last week's episode. We really cover a lot of Mason's thought processes regarding that, and kind of where our heads are at about Modern. And it was not very surprising to me that Mason was very comfortable piloting Money Pile for the tournament, and that he was doing so well after.
Yeah, first time playing Money Pile in a big paper tournament too. Woohoo! Easy. It's so much easier than Moto, by the way. Let's just get that out of the way. Moto, you have to do the triggers. No, not a problem IRL. Just shuffling's the only problem.
So let's talk about that really quick, because my next question is, I mean, this is the first Grand Prix style event. It's not technically a MTG Fest or a Grand Prix, but in like what, 2 years now? It's been a long time. Was there a different level of preparation for this event? Did you feel like you kind of got your feet back under you at the SCG Con, or I don't know, what was like the feeling, and how did you kind of keep your head on straight going from playing your Pro Tour on your in your bed to?
Well, I played it right here, baby. We're at the I played the Pro Tour right now. I didn't want to tell you all to get you nervous, but you're here with me in this sacred space known as my office.
But going from that to kind of back into the real world of competitive Magic in paper, how did it feel? Talk to me about it.
Yeah, so Abe and I put a lot of work into Modern. I watched a lot of Modern, consumed a lot of Modern content for the SCG Invitational. Like SCG Con was the first one back. SCGs were kind of the thing I'd really dedicate a lot of my time to. And if assuming all events came back to like the way they were before, it would probably be where I'm at again on sort of stuff. So I'm in a lot, and I'm gonna see a lot of friends, and also like just a lot of heaters, a lot of killers there. And being a smaller field, you're like gonna play against them a lot. And so I got kind of my foot back in stuff with that when it comes to like getting my bearings and getting back used to playing with cards. I also have been having local tournaments to me since like May or July. Actually, you know what? Whenever Modern Horizons 2 came out, it's about a week after that is when we started doing locals again. So I don't know if that was in May or July, but somewhere in that time frame. So I've been playing weekly in paper that whole time, and my local Modern community is actually like very vibrant and very fluid. We actually have a lot of people that don't like to play just one deck, and they switch decks a lot. So I have a lot of experience against a lot of stuff, you know, and getting to flow into that sort of thing. It was just like second nature though. Like when we went to the main hall for the GP Vegas, and it was the same hall they've always used. Although, funny enough, they laid it out. You know, if you've been there before, when you would walk into the main hall from like where the Starbucks is, it's all kind of sideways. It's like horizontal to you, but this time it was vertical towards you, and it threw me off. I was like, whoa, why, like, where are we gonna play? And it was just, they just laid it out like on its side basically this time. It completely threw me. But besides that, it was, you know, second nature. Like my round one opponent like knew who I was, wanted to talk about these sort of things, and it was actually like his first their first big like Matter tournament thing. They started playing like, I think they said about 4 months before COVID, and so they played on Arena, so they didn't really get to do anything in paper, and they were so excited to meet all these people they'd watched online and like all these sort of things. And so it was funny because I got to kind of watch this in theirs, but I was cool as a cucumber. I was excited to play. When it comes to like the competitive aspect of stuff like triggers and things like that, I'm on top of my game. Like I've been playing so much in paper, it wasn't a problem. But I got to say, if I hadn't played all these sort of things, I think it would have been. And a lot of my day one opponents, it felt like they were maybe had played a couple local things, and that was it. You know, like they had not played a whole bunch of paper Magic. A lot of people said, "Wow, this is a lot easier on Moto," when they were doing their things. So
Yeah, I know that like when I go to Grand Prix, I get like mentally tired after day one. I'm just like, I need a nap. So I was just curious if it was, you know, going back to these style events was more mentally taxing than, you know, getting to sit at your desk.
It is mentally taxing. I drank a lot of coffee, and it was also actually mentally taxing for me because across Friday and Saturday, I slept about 7 hours. I got in late because my flight got delayed on Friday. Was at the Airbnb with some people like JL, friend of the show, and then Beck, who I've never met in person before. And I thought they would want to go to bed immediately. So I stayed up on my 4-hour flight, and they wanted to stay up and talk for like an hour and a half. And I was like, all right, yeah, we'd do this. And then my room had like this loud AC unit that would wake me up every hour and a half when it would turn on, and did that all weekend. And so I didn't sleep very consistently. And then on Friday night, we went to a place called Mott 32, which is really good Chinese food. And me and my friend Brittany split a bunch of starters to like just try a bunch of stuff. And I had this like chili chicken that gave me like basically destroyed my stomach. And all night Saturday and all day Saturday while playing the event, I asked the judge to go to the bathroom every single round basically. And so I was I was exhausted and tired. I was like just barely hanging on near the end there.
Just giving it 110% every round.
It was
leaving it all
rough.
on the table.
I hope you weren't leaving it on the table.
Yeah.
My last question is kind of a, you know, a softball for you there, Mason, which is just like, is there any one thing that you would say the listeners of the show as like a takeaway that they could just immediately apply?
Takeaway that they can immediately apply. I think the biggest takeaway is that you just kind of got to play and just do the best you can. And sometimes you're going to make mistakes in games. Like, I think my play this weekend was very, very good. And I'm very happy with it, which is not always the case. I think there's only one round that I'm really not happy with my play with. But basically, I'm very forgiving of myself. And you have the takeaway is you got to be forgiving when you make these mistakes. You have so many more rounds of the tournament to play. Just because I made a mistake in round one on turn one or whatever, right? If I do that, it doesn't mean I'm going to do that the whole tournament. It doesn't mean that I don't deserve to do well in the tournament. It doesn't mean that. It just means, oh, yeah, I could have done that a little bit better. Let's work on that. And then we have the rest of our lives to hate ourselves for making this mistake if you want to get really psychopathy about it. But you only have, you know, the next day or so to play this tournament. So just don't worry about it too much. Be cognitive of it, but don't let it ruin it. And, you know, just because you make a mistake doesn't mean you're not worthy of winning a game. And I see there's a lot of like people saying stuff like, my opponent played so bad, I can't believe they won. And so sometimes that's true. And sometimes it's like, yeah, man, I mean, they misfetched, but like, I don't know. Like, misfetching happens sometimes. It's cool. Like, give them a break.
Do you remember the?
So
Do you remember the salty? Like, there's lots of salty Smash player compilations, and there's one of a Smash player. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but what you just said reminded me of this piece where this guy is like freaking out. He's streaming, and he's like, he's talking like just mad. He just lost, and he's saying, my opponent was trash, like actual trash. I have no idea how anybody could lose to that person. Like, chat, tell me, like, how does somebody actually? It's like, dude, you just lost to him. Like,
yeah,
like you did. And so it's funny because the direction I thought you were gonna go is people who like will say I deserved to lose that game because of X or Y. Because I think that sometimes like I deserve to lose that game because like you said I misfetched on turn 2 that didn't really play an impact, but I didn't play perfect, so I deserve to lose. And it's like, well, it's a game first of all, so nobody deserves anything. But two, like, I don't know, I think that your advice holds true on both ends, where it's like, be kind to yourself, be kind to your opponent, and just play the best that you can play in the moment.
Yeah.
Make a t-shirt
the
out of
last
that,
Yeah.
people.
This one's more from the event itself. It's that like if you're making a deep run of these tournaments, a lot of my opponents got very anxious near the end. They were like realizing they were in top 8 contention, and your boy Mason was running to the bathroom every 20 minutes, vibing, drinking 2 gallons of water between each round, and it was just like, as far as I'm concerned, my opponent didn't scoot to me in round 1 when I had them dead. I got this draw. I got to win 5 in a row, baby, just like a league. And every round's a win. I'm on like 3 to go from here. So each round is its own round, and you shouldn't be worrying about top 8 until it is actually in your grasp. And so, like my round, so there's only 14 rounds for MTG Vegas because of the size or whatever. I don't actually know why, but it's 14 rounds. So like my round 13 opponent started off 11-0 in the tournament. Then they lost round 12, obviously, because we're playing. And then it's round 13, and if they win, they can then most likely draw in the next round into top 8, 100%. They'll be safe, and it's like their first modern tournament, whatever. And they were extremely anxious and on edge the entire game, to the point of like, I talked to them, and they've played like a lot of limited. They played Magic for a long time, just not modern. But they were quadruple checking life totals and apologizing all the time, and they tapped their mana really poorly. And a lot of things like this, I think actually mulliganing incorrectly, and like things like that actually cost them the game because they were so focused about, oh, I got top 8, got top 8, instead of focusing like, hey, I got to beat this guy in front of me. And I gotta say,
it kind of feels a little bit like a silly takeaway, but like the fact that you did play that entire second day and had like this insane run while on low sleep and after eating food that really messed with you, like, sure, all of these things were holding you back, but like you did still maintain focus on the match in front of you. You played the games that were dealt to you, and like it's very easy to get lost in all of that. I feel like in the moment of it happening, where you're like, oh, there's a million reasons why I should lose, or a million reasons why I can't pay attention. But there's a lot of good reasons why. If you're uncomfortable, you can call a judge and take time for yourself. If you need to drink some water, like drink a bunch of water today, you just got to drink a bunch of water today, and finding ways to make sure that you keep the decisions you're making divorced from the way that you're feeling when it comes to competing in Magic is really important. And so there's always you can always think a little longer about your decision. Like maybe not always if you're playing really slow, but you don't have to let it all get to you. And that is a skill you can always work on in becoming more comfortable with what is going on, and not sweat it so much like maybe some of your later round opponents. I want to pivot over to my questions from here, Mason, if that's cool with you. And I want to start with just you've got a really good handle on the deck, and I feel like you have a really good handle on the modern format in general. That's not really a surprise to me that you did so well. And Money Pile is kind of this, this like it's the 1B to Hammer's 1A, or maybe vice versa, depending on how you see the format. It's coming out of nowhere. How do you think, if you were someone who was playing a deck, any other deck than Money Pile, how is it that you would start to adapt to that deck?
Yeah, so it is hard to, I think, adapt your deck to Money Pile and will still respect Hammer. I think that is part of the choke on the format right now, is that these two decks, along with everything else, are really kind of putting you in a lot of weird directions. I would say that the thing that I think about are twofold. So if you're willing to be a psychopath and be absolutely crazy and change decks, then I think changing your deck might be the easiest way to get an edge against Money Pile. So I think playing a deck like Goblin Charbelcher, Ad Nauseam to a lesser extent, but decks like Ad Nauseam are a problem. Burn, these decks that are trying to not interact on the battlefield in a meaningful way and just kind of kill you in one big burst or over the course of 2 turns, in the case of like something like Burn, um, are really, really hard for Money Pile to beat. And so along those sort of lines, I think having big Haymaker cards are kind of good to have against Money Pile. And that can be things like Blood Moon. I don't think Torpor Orb is one, but some people think it is. So it kind of depends, right? Like on a card like Torpor Orb, like if I have a Teferi 3 or Prismatic Ending, something like that, it's gonna be a real problem. If I have cards like Fury in the early game and you spend your turn 2 Torpor Orbing and I just put my Fury in play, you're going to lose those games. I had that happen this weekend as well. And so it's really hard to hard target and hate on Money Pile. And so when I saw this question earlier, I was trying to think of a good way to. And I think the actual best thing you can do is stop over sideboarding for me. A lot of people sideboarded face up, and I kind of talked to them a little bit, or I kind of looked at what they were doing, and they were bringing in like 3 Torpor Orbs, and they were cutting like some of their 1-drops to do it or whatever, and like just stuff like that. And they were making their game plan much slower and much more grindy. And the problem is if you think about me as a beast, that's exactly what I want. I just want more time to rev up. I'm like a Dragon Ball Z character, baby. The more time you give me, the stronger I get.
I always think of you as a beast, man.
Heck yeah, you do. But yeah, no, but it's like it's kind of like it's really like Dragon Ball Z. If you see it, I'm like, the Saiyans have got to fight for me. That's the elementals and the kill spells. While I supercharge up towards a Yorion or something, or an Omnath. And so I think ways to interact that are good are things that are cheap and are valuable in other spots and hit a wide swath of cards that kind of matter for you. So I think a great example of this is some of the blue decks maybe adopting more mystical disputes. Like Teferi 3 is often backbreaking for them, as is Omnath if it sticks because of the huge mana advantage. Yorion is a card I always have. And that sort of card I think is actually really, really good against me. And it's a way to get some points without giving up too much in other matches because you can still bring in Mystical Dispute. And in theory, it won't mess up your plan too much. And so I think trimming on cards that just aren't as great versus me and bringing those in is good. And I think actually another huge thing that people can do when it comes to try to adapt to the Money Pile is less about changing their deck. Like I think things like Mystical Dispute is good, but I think a lot of people need to actually learn about Money Pile and like listen to episodes like this. They if you want to go to eyelash twitch.tv/eyelash, I did an interview with her for about 30 minutes. So I talked about the deck as well and kind of what the plan is. So Destiny can do. And I'm going to be on the Masters of Moderns podcast this week talking about some as well. So there's a lot of content on there. There's Kane Reinhardt's Nikki Masato who streams, and there's Canister. And there are other people that do it, but I can't remember their names off the top of my head at the moment. Sorry. And I know myself, obviously. But I think you should be listening to content like this and listening to us talk about it. I have an article this week about it because I think you need to understand what my deck's trying to do, because I've gotten a lot of questions that, to just kind of be kind of blunt about it, are showing me that people don't know what my deck is doing. Like a constant question I keep getting is, how do you win with this deck? And it's like, okay, well, my deck has 2 infinite combos in it. I have 2 ways to instantly win the game. And I can just like value out like a traditional control deck. And so I think people just actually don't fully grasp what you're trying to do. And I think that's what's leading to a lot of wins. And that's shown in games where people are like aggressively going after my Coatls at times, or trying to go after my Abundant Growths. And it's like, these are smoothing pieces towards things like Omnath, Teferi, Fury to a lesser extent. Like these are like, I'm going to actually win to Ewit Time Warp. And so like, people got to look at that sort of stuff, I think, personally. And I also think that graveyard hate cards like Nihil Spellbomb should be used against me more. That can like move through a card and interact with my graveyard, because hard graveyard hate cards like Rest in Peace are fine, but be very easily beatable. But things that like stumble me over and like make my Ren and 6 worse, but like let you keep up on cards, are still quite good. So I think those are kind of the big things. If you have any more questions, I'm happy to delve into those, or any questions about specific cards.
No, I think it's pretty great that you brought up the Torpor example, because that was kind of my feelings as a Hammer player in dealing with like the rise of these money pile decks, was that like I needed a card like Thoughtseize to be able to answer, like poke holes in the money plan game plan more so than try to answer any specific set of cards. It was more about reacting to that draw. So I think that's really good. So my next question, unless Spencer, you have something to add there, is kind of a little more. I think there's like, I don't know how I always think of Magic Horns that I play, and do well in, is like you don't have a good run without there being some like sweet plays or really like awesome moments. You know, the like oh wow, I'm like meant to win this thing like kind of moments. And so I want to know if there were any of those that really like stood out to you that you wanted to share with the class. Get really chiseled into the mountaintop of Magic success here on the podcast.
Oh yeah. Well, let me tell you about how I knew I was going to do well in this tournament. It's round 2. I win round 1. Round 2, I start playing my opponent. They're very nice. They read my articles. They're great. One absolute legend. So smart. You know they're good because they read my stuff. And we play game 1 of the money pile. I win. Game 2, they win. They were both kind of close games, whatever. But we're playing some turbo Magic. We got 10 minutes left. We need to finish this match. And I look at my 7, and Abe, you'd be so proud. My 7 was good, but not acceptable. So I mulliganed. I could have kept it, but I mulliganed. I go to 6, no lands. 5, no lands. 4, I got 2 lands. I got a Teferi 3, and I got an Expressive Iteration. I'm like, this is the best we got, baby. And I mulligan. I'm on the play. I like go land go. And my first draw for the first turn I get to draw is Emrakul the Promise End. And I think, well, I need you to win, but not now. Fast forward to the game. Slam my Emrakul the Promise End. Use all my opponent's cards. Kill them. I win the game. They can't kill my Emrakul. And I was like, wow, I'm meant to win this tournament. I just won on a Moldafor in the matchup that's all about card advantage, where I drew my 13 drop on the first turn and missed some land drops. Holy cow, I cannot blow this tournament. Some other kind of cool and exciting lucky moments was in round 5, I believe. Trying to think about this. It's 5. Yep. I'm playing against Green-White Heliod. And I have an Iceman Coatl in play, and I have 1 Snowland. I've got a bunch of other mana that can play it. And my opponent has like a Spike Feeder, like a Sanctifier Vect, a Ranger Captain of Eos. And they like read they draw for turn. They have like 1 card, and they read my Coatl, and like, it needs 2 others, right? And I'm like, yeah. And like, those aren't Snow Duels, right? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, attack you. And I go, Flashing Coatl, draw. And they're like, yeah. And then I'm like, second Coatl, draw. And I just block everything, eat the whole board. And suddenly the game's unlosable. Before we were in kind of a pickle. So I had those things happen. I had a couple of things, like I played against Tron in the last round at day 2. Or day 1, sorry. And my opponent has like the 1-2-7 shirt on. And I'm like, oh no. And I like barely beat them. And then in game 3, I like mulligan to 5, but I keep a hand that looks really, really bad, but it has most of the pieces of the Time Warp combo, which is one of the ways you win, is you can take infinite turns with this deck with Ephemerate, E-Witness, Time Warp, by the way, in case you were wondering earlier when I said there are things this deck does. That's one of them. And I didn't like rip it off the top. I had to like play really tight and like get to 1 life. And I started looping my cards, and I was like, would you like to concede? And my opponent's like, yeah, let's get dinner. And I was like, heck yeah, 7-1. We did it. We beat Tron. It's unbeatable. So I did those, and I had a lot of really good games against Cedric. But the one exciting kind of funny moment of that is in game 3 against Cedric, I have like 2 Iceman Coils in play, a Teferi 3, a Renin 6. I've got 5 lands, and my hand is Bolt, Force of Vigor, green card, and Cedric just has a bunch of artifacts and like no cards in hand. And I'm just tanking. I'm just looking. And this is where the mad Meebo picture is on Twitter, if you've seen that. Because Meebo's mad because I'm not like making a move. Because I'm trying to think, how on earth does Cedric ever beat me? And I'm just like sitting there, and I'm like, he can't, right? And I'm just like trying to think, if I like could pick his deck up and pick cards for him every turn, what would have to happen? And then after I come out, as I'm coming out of the tank of it is impossible, as long as I always hold up 1 mana for this bolt, or like I get a chance to use the bolt, then I can do whatever. the judge goes, I need you to make a play. And at that point, I just start making plays with like always keeping up this one land, and Cedric eventually has to go for it. And I essentially like plop my hand on the table, his whole board disappears, and then he concedes a turn later. And it's like, okay, all right. Like I had the tools, we made sure we didn't lose to things. His first draw set was part of the draw set, by the way, that was like gonna beat me in my theoretical line or could come close. And I was like, but we did it. It's fine. We won. So yeah, those are the exciting things. There are a bunch of other pretty good stories, but they involve a lot more theatrics, and we got to move on with the podcast. So I took my 5 minutes. But Emrakul's great. That was exciting ones.
Powerful card. We should talk about it for like 5 to 7 minutes sometime.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? One last one. Money Pile Mirror, day 2. We're playing Turbo Magic again, because you got to play a little Turbo Magic in the Money Pile Mirror. I slam Emrakul to Promise End. My opponent at Solitudes it. I untap, and I'm not going to explain the whole thing, but basically, I needed to Wrenn and 6 ultimate their own Wrenn and 6, so I could like answer their whole board and then beat the Wrenn and 6 emblem over 6 turns, and I did. And that was super sick. It involved like having to constantly Dovin's veto these expressive iterations they're trying to retrace. I had to like let one resolve. And it was a crazy series of games, but
it's not often you come to the determination that the right thing to do while you control your opponent's turn and they're getting another one after that is, yeah, I need to give you a Wrenn and 6 emblem. So
yeah, and you have I had no board at the time. Like I like slammed an Emrakul and I got Solitude, and it's like, I'm at 26 or whatever. Like, I gotta figure this out. So that's that.
And my last personal question before we get to some patron questions is, if you were going to talk to someone who was brand new to pick up Money Pile, they were like, wow, I love Mason. I want to play Magic like Mason. I want to play the Mason deck. What's something that you maybe figured out over the time playing, or in preparation for the event, or maybe during the event, where you wish you had known coming into it that would have like leveled you up instantly? Like for me with Hammer, it's like playing your Hammer before your Pursteel Paladin is something that always blows people's minds of like, oh, I can not draw a card to make sure I equip my Hammer. I don't know if there's anything maybe that that easy to explain, but
there kind of is actually. So I have 2 for this. The first one is kind of like the Hammer before Pursteel, and that's, I kind of realized that if I was close to the combo, while not always the optimal play, I should try to like trade resources a little heavier and then like expose my Ewit to removal, because if I expose my Ewit to removal, it actually makes it easier to deploy the combo. And a lot of the times I actually would like hold combo to the point where like I deploy it all at once where my opponent can't really react. But you are very easily able to like kind of get there again, and you don't have to worry about it. So like one thing that happened to be like, okay, I like bolt your thing in my main phase, play Ewit, pick up bolt or whatever, or like Ewit as like just grab a land and like make sure I'm hitting land drops and that sort of thing. And now I'm like threatening to combo at like 2 to 3 turns sooner. And if your opponent knows what's up, that actually puts a lot of pressure on them. And if you can like see a spot where like maybe they're missing land drops, or you can force them to use a Teferi minus so that you can then maybe bolt Teferi or get in there with an Icewind Coatl, that sort of stuff I think is actually something I didn't do enough of early in the game that I kind of adapted towards near the end of the tournament that I think was a pretty big help. And the second is, do not sweat the little things with this. I mean, like, if you're playing a big tournament, sweat the little things always. But like, if you're trying to pick up this deck and just start playing it, there's a lot of intricate things that are going on. There's a lot of like different loops and stuff. Like, I had stuff happen this tournament that never happened in testing. Like against Yawgmoth, I assembled like Counterspell, Ephemerate, Ewit as just like a line that beats like, the next 2 spells they play once I have enough mana for it. Like once I have 5 lands and 4 of them are blue, I can counter 2 things, which forces them to get to 3 things. I just never had that come up in testing before. And so there are a lot of little things that you discover and like engineer and create. And so I think like just play, and sometimes you're gonna make mistakes. I made a bunch of mistakes doing it at first. I made one in the tournament that was pretty bad, but for the most part, just kind of do things and it will work out for you in the end. It will be good. And I think that's good. Also, your Ephemerate, when rebounded, goes to your graveyard after you target your win list, so you can pick it up. And people didn't seem to get that. Like one of my Money Pile opponents, like did it, and they like tanked and like picked up a bolt. And it's like, yeah, you can just pick up that Ephemerate, and then now you have Ephemerate again for your win list, and you just pick that bolt up on its own. You're worth it. You can spend the 1 more mana.
Ephemerate and Ewit together is very, very powerful. That is not.
It is.
that is a different kind of magic.
Timeless Witness is on Arena, and so is Ephemerate. So I kind of want to like brewski a little there, where like it's the 4-mana. Yeah, the 4-mana Ewit.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this is a little bit of a sidetrack towards Pauper. My new main thing. but I've definitely played a lot of like Ephemerate, Archaeomancer, Pauper piles that are like establishing these locks, and it's very intricate and thinking about it when it's happening. But once you do it a couple times, it definitely gets down, and it makes a lot of sense to me that being able to deploy and develop that Eternal Witness was something that was kind of an unlock for you in performing even better with the deck over the course of the tournament. So our first question, shout outs to Adrian for this question, just asks, what are the biggest weaknesses of Money Pile? Like, if you just plain and simple, what is it losing to?
Things that don't interact on the battlefield and are trying to be like stack-based combo, or maybe end with a singular thing that kills you on the spot, like a Thassa's Oracle or a Charbelcher. So I would say the biggest weakness of this deck is Goblin Charbelcher. I think Burn is another pretty big weakness. Former co-host of the show, Ali Warfield, was at the tournament with us, and they played Money Pile. They played a canister version of the deck from like a couple days ago before the event at the time, and they just lost to Burn like 3 times, I think. I think they just lost round 1, lost round 2, lost round 4 to it. And they just like, that deck can be very hard, and we're actually seeing Money Pile players adapt. Like, I actually have changed my sideboard, so now I'm playing 3 Sunset Revelries, because it's like, okay, like I need to actually like really come with burn hate. So those sort of decks are really a problem. Things like Ad Nauseam are in theory bad, but you're a little better against them. Like Teferi messes them up. I would say try to play combo decks where Teferi Time Reveler isn't a big problem for you, or isn't something that can like maybe impact your game plan in a huge way. So I think those sort of weaknesses are big weaknesses of the deck. And I think the deck does have a go wide problem, but that problem can be fixed with Supreme Verdict, while the stack-based combo problem, I think, is just a problem for this sort of style of the deck, no matter what. And I think you have to become a 60-card Force Negation version to actually beat the Belcher decks. But the fear I have with this 4-color deck is I think it's actually maybe too good in like the theoretical, where like we can adapt to everything everyone's doing, and it's really about picking your spots. And I think that's why I did so well this weekend, is I picked my spot with Iceman Coatl, and not a lot of other people did. A lot of people were jumping out with Spreading Seas, but the problem is people IRL love playing creature decks, and there are a lot of incentives to play MTG Vegas that are not winning the tournament. But you have to beat the decks like Heliod Company in order to win. You have to beat like a lot of Money Pile players talk to lost to things like Merfolk, etc., and like because they all have these stupid Spreading Seas instead of Coatls. And so, do you want to hear more about that? Check out my article this week. I have a whole 4 paragraphs about it. But yeah, I think those are the biggest weaknesses of the deck, is stack-based combo. It is a problem, and it is a problem you can't really overcome.
Yeah, it's a structural issue for sure. Your deck's best cards, right, are like their Omnath, their Solitude, their Fury. Those are your best like interactive spells, or your biggest haymakers, and those are not ones that are really, they're not winning against things that are going well over what you're doing. They're not beating like, you know, big mana things like Karn or you know, someone just casting Goblin Charbelcher dealing you 50 damage or whatever. Yeah. And our final question from patron shoutouts Christian, kind of piggybacking on Adrian's question, if there are like cards or combinations of cards that maybe aren't those archetypal kind of problems that, you know, give Money Pile some trouble, what are those things? Like if I'm a blue-white control player or a Jund player, what are the kind of cards that I want to make sure that I'm prioritizing in the matchup?
So things that are kind of a problem are we like actually just like discard spells are kind of a problem. Like a lot of the times you keep hands that lean on a card, and you have a lot of like your deck just has a lot of redraws, and you kind of hope to work towards them. So things like Thoughtseize IOK are like actually a problem when combined with something like DRC to put you on the back foot. So those are problematic cards. I would say Threat plus Answer is actually quite good against my deck. It is not insurmountable, but like if you poke holes in my deck, it becomes a real problem. And my deck really does kind of like lean on the like, hey, I'm trading 2 cards to answer your big problem card, and I'll recoup this advantage later. So shortening the game clock or making it ways where I can't do that are really, really powerful. I think another thing this deck has a real problem with is Teferi 3. You lean on Ephemerate a lot in order to generate some of your card advantage back. And so when decks play Teferi 3, it can be a little bit of a challenge. In fact, it's like the only card besides Counterspell that really matters out of blue-white control. Besides that, the matchup is ungodly easy. And so I think those are things. I think that the stuff that I would say that I've seen a bunch that are maybe it's better for me to tell you what those are not good are like dampening spheres, like pretty medium. People think it's great against me. Uh, Blood Moon fluctuates. It really depends on your style of deck. Like if you're an aggressive Blood Moon deck, it's a problem. If you're a slow Blood Moon deck, it is not a problem. And that's kind of a card I think a lot of people fluctuate a bit on me with. People think piles of counterspells are a problem. They're only a problem until Teferi comes down, and you can recoup so much advantage. The deck you really need to like assemble punch a hole plus threat, or punch a hole plus like shorten the game. Those sort of things are strong. So like Eidolon of the Great Revel kind of does this in a way where like it eats a kill spell and does me a little damage, and if I don't answer it, I die. So like that's another card, but really there are not too many cards that are widely played and are widely playable that actually put a big punch in this sort of deck. It's part of the reason why you see it continue to do so well. But yeah, I'm sure there are things you can do. There are just not a whole lot of things that are like insurmountable that are not combo pieces of some sort.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier in the show one of your pieces of advice for people that didn't understand how to beat the deck is that the answer might not be to change the construction of your deck, but actually just to switch decks to pressure pressure it differently. And as you were talking about the blue-eye control thing, it's like, well, it's possible that like you need to like play. I mean, Kiki combo is like probably a bad deck still, but like drastically changing your deck to like a combo control deck rather than.
I think Copycat's quite good for
there you go. See, yeah, exactly. Like
I have a friend who locally has been crushing with like 4-color Scape Shift as his answer to the money pile decks. Is that he's gonna do the kind of the same thing and he's gonna circumvent the rest of this like mid-range arms race. Instead of having Emrakul, he's got Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, and Dryad. There's lots of ways to do that, but
yeah. So yeah, I guess actually that is one I forgot about. Scape Shift would be a combination of cards that is tough for me to beat. But it is doable. I think I have Alpine Moons and I can do more of it. But yeah, that is that. I'm sorry that there's not more there, but yeah, like I said, that's kind of my answer to the question. I wonder if Copycat Omnath Pile is the blade.
Does it have a good name?
Money Cat.
Money Cat?
Yes. That is a great name.
Cash Money?
It's just Meowth. Because he's got the coin on his head.
You guys. Well, Mason,
that's $1, right? In Japan, wasn't that like their dollar?
I mean, he has a move called Payday.
He does have a coin on his forehead.
He does have a coin.
He does have a move called Payday.
Oh yeah, he gets Payday too. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna get in 2 weeks from Vegas, baby. 0.03%. Lost $300. 0.03%. One of my opponents couldn't win one more game.
Honestly, man, congratulations on the great weekend, and it was really cool to see you do well with the deck that you've been working hard on and talking about. And I really enjoyed this conversation today. I appreciate you sharing it with the listeners and with me and Abe.
I'm happy to. Cut Reflecting Pool from your deck. Stop it. They didn't ask for a Kurt easy one, but I segue here, dude, you gotta cut Reflecting Pool. It's so bad. It's it is unplayably bad. Spike's gonna tell you it's good. He's so nice. I met him at the airport. He's a great guy. I love him. I love his girlfriend. They're so
not
nice.
His mana bases.
No, I'm fine with his mana bases outside of Reflecting Pool. Anyways, other people are gonna get you. They're trying to tell you. They're like, no, that Mason guy's wrong. He's so nice. He's so smart. He played so well. He's so handsome, so devilish. That devilish part's getting you right now. Wrong. Cut it. Play a fetch. All right. Well, that's gonna do it for this week's episode of Constructive Criticism. Thank you all so much.
You know what, Mason? As our guest, where can people find you?
Wow. Well, you can find me here each and every week talking about Magic the Gathering and Constructive Criticism. You can find me on Card Kingdom every single Thursday, where I have a new article published predominantly focused on the arena format. So you're going to see standard and historic there, but you'll see a modern from time to time, just like this week, where I not only go over the strengths of the deck, the weaknesses of Money Pile, I give you a sideboard guide, baby. So you can check that out as well. It's only 5 decks. If you want the full sideboard guide, you have to be a CCMTG patron. But that is kind of where you'll find me everywhere. And I guess specifically for this week, I am guesting on the Masters of Modern podcast I think it airs this week, but they might record their episodes a week ahead of time. I'm unsure, also because of the holidays. But if you want to hear more about this deck, I'll be there. So check them out.
Yeah, the best way to find that is probably to follow Mason on Twitter. I know that's a hard ask. Spencer, where can people find you?
Not the last couple of days, baby. You almost top 8 a GP. You get a bunch of followers.
You can find me at Spencer13H. You can find mostly other content other than Magic the Gathering on the parent YouTube channel of He's Game Media. Man, I'm sick, guys. Yeah, those are probably the best ways to find me. Just check out He's Game Media, and I'm here every week on this podcast listening to the sweet, sweet sounds of Tan and Grace and Mason Clark.
And I'm not Tan and Grace.
I met Tan this weekend again.
At More Nothings on Twitter, where you can find me. DM's still open for coaching. Still a great Hammer Time player. Still shilling for myself as always. But with that does it for another big congratulations to Mason on such a great job at what is, hopefully the first of many big tournaments coming back in paper. It was really great to see him have a great run, and we'll see you all next week right here on Constructed Criticism.
Bye, everybody. Great episode, Tannen. Great episode.